Yarana faho tato. Hello again to all of us. This is our story this afternoon. This is another story from Mangareva. In an earlier story, I talked about Raikeno, a chief of a district called Tahuaga. And Raikeno was a bad man. He killed his nephews. He killed his twin sister's son because he was jealous of the boy. This is another story that involves Raikeno. Raikeno, he had a daughter named Nuiaiti, and she married a man in Tahuaga, and his name was Tahuaga. And the woman became pregnant, and when she was pregnant, according to their custom, she was put in a special enclosure that was tapu, that was sacred, and because it was tapu, people you couldn't go in there. She was the only one allowed in that enclosure. And her grandfather came, and his name was Tahuaga. And he came to visit his granddaughter, Nuiaiti, and he went inside the tapu enclosure. And to punish him, Raikeno, he hit him, he injured him somehow, and Tahuaga died. But before Tahuaga died, he said to his granddaughter Nuiaiti, he said, "When the time comes for you to avenge my death, go to your uncle Tapau Nui." Okay? And then he died. And when he was dead, they put his body on, like on a little raft, and they pushed it out in the sea at a place called Reikohu. And it went out, and because they were burying the body at sea. Okay? I think their idea was it would be easier for the body to go to Hawaii, because sometimes it was thought that Hawaii was in the bottom of the sea. This is the spirit world. They pushed his body out in the sea, and the next morning the body floated back to shore. And they pushed it out again, and it came back again. And they pushed it out again, and the third time it came back again. And in Mangarevan stories, this means something. And the granddaughter, Nuiaiti, she went to the dead body of her grandfather, and she said, "If it's revenge that you want, dry up the springs. Drive the fish into the deeper water. Deprive the land of its food." And then they pushed the body back out into the sea, and it didn't come back anymore. And the women of Tahuaga, there's this hill called Timanuayoapa, and they went up on that hill one evening to have a ceremony to mourn for the death of Tahuaga. And the name of that ceremony was Tiraorama. And this woman, Nuiaiti, the granddaughter, she went up there on the hill with these women, and they were up there having this ceremony. And she has this like uncle that her grandfather was talking about, Tapau Nui. And he came, and he stood on another hill that's nearby called Teakita. And he called to his niece, the Nuiaiti, to come. And she came to him. And he said to her, "Before Tahuaga died, what did he say to you? Did he say something to you?" And she said, "She told me to come to you and marry you." And he said, "No, we're too closely related. But you can go to another uncle of yours, Kakahokura. And although he's your uncle, he may marry you." Okay? And while they were talking, there was a wind that came. It was a hot, dry wind. And the leaves and the trees and the bush, they wilted. And when Nuiaiti went down to the shore, there were these 4 springs in Tahuaga, and they had dried up. And they had these breadfruit pits. During the times of the harvest of breadfruit, they would fill the pits up with breadfruit, and that would be like their food storage. And the breadfruit pits were eaten by worms, and the food was rotten. And the fish, they swam out into the deeper water because it was cooler out there. And these people, they had, in Tahuaga, there was a drought, and they ran out of food, and they had a famine. Now this woman, Nuiaiti, she listened to the advice of her uncle Tapau Nui, and she went to this other uncle of hers, and his name was Kakahukura. And he had built himself in the bush a little house. And he was the enemy. He was an enemy of Ngatavake. And he would go out and hide in the bush or whatever. And sometimes he'd come in and attack the people of Ngatavake. And the place where he had his house, it's known, the name of that place is Tipiritanga Kakahukura, which I think means the hiding place of Kakahukura. And this woman, she went to Kakahukura. And those two, they went to on the other side of the ridge, to a village called Rikitea, and they lived there. And that drought and that famine, it was confined only to Ngatavake. And the other districts in Mangareva, they had enough food. And this woman, Nguiaiti, she had her first husband, Tahuaga, and she had a son by him, Tearikiotea. And because this boy was living in Ngatavake, he had no food and he was hungry. And he went to his mother in Rikitea. But the thing was, this woman, Nguiaiti, her husband, Kakahukura, was the enemy of Ngatavake. And she was not sure that if he would love her son the same way that he loved her. And so when her son came, she wouldn't tell her husband. She would feed her son secretly at night. And her husband, Kakahukura, he noticed that the food was, he noticed that there was extra food disappearing. And he asked his wife if she was feeding somebody, and she denied it because she's trying to protect her son. And that night when those two went to sleep, Kakahukura, he pretended he was asleep, but he wasn't. And there was a hand that stuck out from outside of the house, that stuck through the wall of the house. Okay? And when he saw that hand, he grabbed the hand. He jumped up and he grabbed the hand to see who it was. And it was his wife's son by her first husband. And he made allowance for the love that his wife had for her son. And he asked the boy, "Why is it you're coming here at night to look for food?" And the boy said, "Well, there's a famine in Ngatavake. A lot of people have died of hunger. The people who aren't dead yet, they sit in the house Puorena with their chief, and they sing the Ute songs." Because these are songs I think what they were doing is that in the old days, when people died, their relatives would get around the dead body as part of the funeral, and they would sing these songs to sing the person's soul into Hawaii. Okay? And so that these guys were singing these songs in this house because they're going, well, if they're thinking, well, everybody's dying, when I'm dead, nobody's going to sing these songs for me to go to Hawaii. So they would sing these songs for themselves. That's what I think. Okay? That happened in other places, but I just don't know about Mangareva. And so when Kakahukura, he heard his enemies were starving to death. Okay? That was kind of news. That was an interesting news for him. And what he did is he organized a feast for this boy, Tearikiotea, and for the god Tu. And they went to Amara, which is a worship ground. And the people brought coconuts. And the importance of coconuts is in the times of war, coconuts were the food because you didn't have to spend time to cook the coconuts. You just ate them raw. And the food was for this boy. But Kakahukura, he pulled aside his warriors and he said to them secretly, he says, "Tonight we're going to go to Ngatavake and we're going to fight them." Okay? And that night, they went over the ridge to Ngatavake and they attacked them. And because the people were starving, they couldn't fight. And so the king of Ngatavake was replaced, and Kakahukura, he won the battle, and he replaced the king of Ngatavake, and he replaced it with his wife's first son, this boy Tearikiotea. And this boy Tearikiotea was the great-grandson of Tahuaga. And it was Tahuaga, the guy who died, and his mana, his power, his magic power, has come back from the grave, and it caused this drought and this famine in Ngatavake. And as soon as Tahuanga's son becomes the chief, as soon as Tahuanga's great-grandson becomes the chief of Natavake, the drought ended. The rain fell. The water flowed out of the water holes. The fish, they returned back to the shore, and the food returned to the land. And that was the story. That was Tahuanga's revenge for his death was over. Now, Raikeno, he was the chief who killed his twin sister's son out of jealousy. During the famine, his sister Tara, she lived in this other island called Akamari. She sent him a message for him to come to her and stay. And Raikeno thought, hey, my sister must have forgiven me that I killed her son. So because of his hunger, he went to Akamari. And his sister had not forgiven him. And she fed him disgusting food. And indeed, she mixed her menstrual blood in the food. And he ate it. And what he had done, he had broken a very serious taboo. And the gods were angry with Raikeno, and they killed him, and he died. And so Tara, she got her revenge. Ko hope te yereko. These words are done. Now in this story, there's two messages. One's positive, one's negative. The negative message. Raikeno, he killed his nephew, and basically in his mind he got away with it. He went and killed Tahuanga later. Maybe he was thinking, hey, I can get away with stuff. In this case, Tahuanga's mana, his power came back from the grave, and it caused a famine, it caused chaos, and in that chaos, Raikeno, he died. So, you do something bad and you get away with it, that may not be good, because you may end up doing it to the wrong person, then you'll really be in trouble. Okay, then the positive message. This guy Tahuanga, he died, pushed his body out to sea, it keeps coming back. His granddaughter finally says to him, if you want revenge, deprive the land of its food, dry up the springs. Push the body out, and it doesn't come back, which is kind of ominous. All right. He had mana, which is like this magic power. It's kind of, they talk about it like it's magic, but it's not really magic. It's sort of like your power to influence things, to do good. God has mana, but it's not necessarily force. It's like a soft power. Sometimes it's like magic, but sometimes it's your influence to do good. His mana came back from the grave, and it caused this drought and famine, and that was his revenge. Okay, now, if we have mana, okay, there's a way that we can have mana that will come back from the grave. If we teach others, if we teach children, teach youth, share knowledge, teach values, improve the things around us in the world. When we're dead, those people that we taught will still remain, and that knowledge we pass to them will still continue. So although we're dead, we still have an influence for good in the world. In a way, one can say that our mana has come back from the grave. All right? This man, Tahuanga, is one of my examples. Ko hope te yereko. These words are done.